Is there a report from the city manager?
Yes, Mayor and Council, I have a report on updating you on the community on our progress in addressing flood-related issues. There we go. So, again, as I've talked about, time is one of those things that seems to be running together over the last 2 weeks. We're actually we'll be at 2 weeks tomorrow night. And so in some cases, it still feels like it was 4 days ago. But we have been moving pretty fast as we've been going forward. We are fundamentally in the recovery phase of this project. One of the things that we are continuing to work on is the Disaster Assistance Center. We are finding that, at least as I've been by the facility in the last few days and as I drive by on a daily basis, there are a lot of folks that are continuing to use that. As we've talked about how long it will be open, that's really going to be dependent on the number of folks that are continuing to come in. We are also actively working with Boulder County on various areas of common interest. Sunset Bridge, as you know, is in the county, but it's also a major roadway for the city, and so we are in conversations about how we approach that. What we're also seeing with the county is if you look at the scope of the disaster and you look at what they have to deal with in Jamestown and Lyons, we're also talking about, in order to expedite some of these projects, is it better for the city to actually take the staff lead on this? But we're still working through those conversations and how we include it in the information for FEMA. County Line Road is another one of those that we're working on. And County Road 80, and that's the road to Button Rock. That's a major issue for us right now as we go forward. While we didn't have any issues with Button Rock Dam, we do know that there's debris there that we need to get up and address. And so we are continuing to have conversations on a daily basis with the county, FEMA, the state, and really trying to impress upon them that we need to move with some pace, hopefully on 36, and then also how we deal with County Road 80. The other item that we're talking about that we're engaging in discussions on a daily basis is the rechannelization of the river. Again, a very important issue for our community, and we still have the cut through Hygiene Road because of the way the river rediverted itself, and so we need to work on that. We also are working with FEMA on a regular basis. Yesterday we had a tour with representatives that were putting the information together to send to Washington. We presented our information in terms of damages and the numbers. And we had a really good visit as we toured the city moving forward. When we talk about FEMA, one of the good pieces, some good news that we actually received today, and you all may have received it in an email, is that the declaration has been expanded to include added categories C through G. That is very important for us as a local government because that really then allows us to start looking at permanent improvements that they will fund, and so it covers everything from roads and bridges to parks, recreational, and in the other category. And so that was actually the information that we presented to them yesterday, and they did indicate to us that they needed to get it to DC that night, and so maybe it helped in that declaration. The declaration is only for Boulder and Larimer counties at this point. The other counties have not been included in that. We don't expect you to read it. That wasn't the point of putting this in there. What we really did is this is a map that has been put together by Public Works and Natural Resources, and each one of those orange boxes indicates an area where we have had some type of damage related to the flooding that went through our community, and it was really just trying to show the scope of the damage, and as you can see, it essentially follows the St. Vrain and Left Hand Creek. Next slide, please. This is a preliminary damage estimates that we have put together. And again, I stress that this is preliminary as we continue moving forward. You can see the categories. I'm not going to go over that, but the total is $148,600,000. I am going to draw your attention to storm drainage, where you can see $90 million in that category. Actually, a significant component of that is the rechannelization of the river. And so we are working with the state and the Army Corps of Engineers on that process. So we're not exactly sure how that's going to come together, but that number needed to be included so they could send that forward to Washington for the conversation in terms of the disaster declaration. But 80 million of that is related to the river rechannelization, and that looks west. Next slide, please. Are there any questions at this point, or? Debris removal. So once we went through the immediate emergency response to the flooding, and we then moved into debris removal, and what we're really talking about is debris removal in neighborhoods. The large-scale debris collection that was going on in the greens, Champion Greens in the valley, we've actually finished that. But we are placing roll-offs in the neighborhood because we know that there's more work that's going to be done. In addition, we're continuing to exchange roll-off containers in the other areas affected by the flood. And this is not all-inclusive. This is just some of the areas that I listed is just an example of where we're continuing to place roll-offs. Boston Avenue, I will draw your attention to that because that is an industrial section of our community. We felt like it was just as important to place those roll-offs in the industrial section as it was in the neighborhood. We're also assisting 2 commercial storage facilities with debris removal. The reason we're being so aggressive with debris removal is because the longer we leave it out there, the more issues that can start coming along with it. So we really felt like we needed to get it off as quickly as possible. Next slide. We have, to date, removed 927 tons, or approximately 4,000 cubic yards via the large-scale process that we were utilizing with heavy equipment and dump trucks. We've also removed 474 tons, or approximately 2,000 cubic yards via roll-offs. And we're still estimating that we have another 4,000 cubic yards on the ground at our staging facility at 1st and Martin Street. And we're also going through and bidding contracts to remove debris in the river channel and under bridges. What we did during the height of the storm is we were removing what we could to make sure that flow went through that process. At this point, I really will say that if you look at the pictures here, the picture on the right of the screen is what it looked like as they were going into neighborhoods, and in some cases it was much worse. The one in the middle is actually the debris pile, and that looks a lot better than when we've been out. But the top picture is actually seeing what happens when they go through and essentially that third phase of that collection process. One of the things that's really important is, and this was a comment that FEMA gave us yesterday in terms of the debris collection, they were thoroughly impressed with what we're doing and made the comment that we are farther ahead in this process, but also in what they've seen in other deployments and other disasters. So again, more kudos to staff because of the job that they're doing. As we work with water, we still really need to continue the outside watering restriction. We are not bringing that to council for formal action because I would like to take this opportunity to thank the residents of our community. We have seen significant decreases in water usage, and so obviously by making the request, the residents have listened and they're helping us out, so we don't feel like we need to take any formal action. Again, just continuing to request that people do not water outside. We are continuing the inspection of the North Pipeline. The good news is that at this point we have not seen a catastrophic failure in that pipeline, so that is really good news for us. But as I mentioned earlier on County Road 80, on the road to Button Rock, we're continuing to work with the county and really stress how urgent it is for us to get in that location, especially as winter approaches and the work that we need to do. We're also working to reestablish the South Pipeline. We know that pipeline has been breached, but we can actually access it. And so we're working on that. We're getting ready to start working on that as we speak. And then we're also working to secure sufficient water. And so Dale and his staff has been working with, I believe, is it Northern Water, Dale? And to secure water from the west slope and to meet our 2014 demand if we're not able to clear those pipelines. So again, moving very quickly in terms of securing water. Housing is an issue that we're starting to see creep up on us as we look at folks that need to find temporary or more long-term housing. As you can see, 600 Boulder County households are needing housing as we speak. When we look at the numbers from the Disaster Assistance Center, 460 of the 610 were registered in Longmont. Of that 460, 50% live in our community and 40% live in Lyons. What we're seeing is that there's not a lot of housing units available. And we put this, the numbers in there to kind of show you where it exists. What we're really finding is that it's the housing is available south. And so those are the issues that we're trying to work through. The one thing that we also have to be cognizant of is typically when you move through these type of events, we need to be aware that we're probably going to see another rush in about 6 to 8 months. And a lot of times what happens is folks get in, they get the assistance money they need, and they think they can finish their homes, and then something ends up happening. And so then typically 6 to 8 months after the initial disaster, you see another push for housing. So, those are things that are really hitting our radar screen at the moment. I think this is the last slide, isn't it? So I wanted to provide you with a brief update in terms of what we're doing and how we're continuing to move in this process. Now that the disaster declaration has been expanded, FEMA is working with the state, and they're going to have an applicants meeting. And then once they have an applicants meeting, they're going to send a team that will actually meet with us. And we need to provide office space, and they will move through the process with us in terms of filling out all the necessary paperwork for that public assistance as we continue to bring these projects together. Some projects, the lower amounts will be a little bit easier. Others, it'll be we'll need engineering numbers as we continue to move forward. Again, the projects that we're focusing on right now is the sewer collector main that was destroyed. Definitely reestablishing our water, the rechannelization of the river, and then dealing with the housing needs that we're seeing in our community. And that's drawing major focus from staff at this point. In addition, we have staff working on all the other projects. So if there's any questions, I'll be happy to answer them at this time.
I have one question. Sometimes the environmental protection group, the federal government, don't allow you to rechannel a river that's moved naturally. Is that going to be a problem that we're going to be butting heads against?
There is always a possibility to deal with those types of issues. I think what we're trying to do is again, work with the county and work with the state and build a strong enough local coalition so we can deal with those issues as they come up. The reality for us is this, and this is what we're trying to communicate. This is about people's homes, and this is about their life. And if that doesn't happen, we've essentially created another floodway in our community. And so we are aggressively engaging in that conversation. We hope that we don't have to deal with anything like that, but if we do, I think bringing everyone together will allow us to move through that conversation. But again, you never know.
Thank you.
Oh, and as Sandy indicated, they've also talked about that with our federal representatives. Any other questions?
Councilmember Santos.
Thank you, Mayor. That was one of the things that we brought up with Senator Bennett when he came to the disaster center.
That's right, I think.
In our conversation, that we wanted to make sure that the Environmental Protection Agency, the Army Corps of Engineers, Transportation, county, state, and the cities were all together in one, at least on the same page, where one agency was saying one thing and the other agency was saying, no, we can't do that. So as long as everyone is working together collaboratively, we weren't running into those roadblocks. So.
And what I can say is, thus far, our experience with the Army Corps when we had to cut the ditch through Hygiene Road and the needed 404 permit was a good experience, and really we got the okay in less than probably 30 minutes. So I think they definitely understand what we're dealing with in Longmont, but really what even the Boulder County residents are dealing with between Lyons and Longmont. And I've had the opportunity to talk to some of those residents that live on Hygiene Road, and one in particular said he didn't like the idea at first, but he came up to me this weekend and said, you know what, that was a really good idea that got the water off of our property. And so those are the folks that we're going to need to deal with as we continue moving forward.
Councilmember Levison.
Thank you, Mayor. Has there been any decision made around the issue of the state block grant for the CDBG Emergency or Disaster Assistance Fund, as far as us getting a direct allocation, not having to go through the block grant?
I have not heard a decision on that at this point.
Okay, thank you.
One of the things that I do need to point out when we talk about the hazard mitigation dollars, what they do is they look at the public assistance dollars and they look at the personal dollars, and then there's a percentage of that. And so they did say in terms of mitigation grants that we are going to be looking to for certain projects that may be down the road a bit. So we're probably talking around a year when all of those dollars come together.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.